Hello and welcome to the Tight Five Live with the Rugby Ruckus crew. Off the back of another big Bledisloe, or New Zealand 27, Australia 7, the man sitting next to me who called me a pork chop on Twitter on the weekend. Thank you very much. We may have some differing views coming out today, but we are going out live on Facebook, live on Twitter. We want to get some questions from you. Post them up there. But first and foremost, Morgan Turinui, how are you feeling after that one, mate?
Oh, disappointed. Never like losing. Doesn't matter whether it's a place we haven't won in 20 matches and haven't won in X amount of years. We always want to see our Wallabies win. Wanted to see them back up the performance of the week before. Didn't quite get there. There's enough in there to be not to be giving up as a Wallaby supporter, but overall disappointment at the result. That's for sure, Benny. And look, pork chop were some of the only four-letter words I could use on Twitter in front of the
I'll take it that you didn't agree with some of the things I said. I put some fairly strong commentary out there. I want to just talk to that for a second. I've been hammered a little bit on Twitter by some types who believe I should be a cheerleader. Now, when you and I started doing this podcast, we said from the very start, we do it because we love rugby. We want to see rugby thrive, but that does not mean we don't call a spade a spade. If we don't think something's up to scratch, be it on the field or off the field, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk through it. I'm absolutely not here to cheerlead. I think for me, it was a really frustrating game. At the end of the game, really what I felt too was I felt that Benny Darwin was bang on for us. Benny Darwin wrote a column for our subscribers, our exclusive subscriber newsletter. He wrote it before the first test, where he said this is not a great All Blacks team, but also similarly, it's not a great Wallabies team. It's two teams that are freshly come together. And I think that the reason I saw frustration was what I saw was an All Blacks team that for me was not up to scratch to the usual All Blacks teams from the last few years, right? You know, clearly there's some guys in there. Their tight five's not quite there. Their back row, they've got their best number 7 playing number 8. They've got their best number 10 playing 15. And for me, to not be able to see a Wallabies team take advantage of that when they had some chances, they had some things they could have done in that game, I found that really frustrating. But Morgs, in the end, the game went the way I thought it would. I called it in our subscribers exclusive podcast before. I said within 2 converted tries would be a good result. In the end, 20 points. Did you think the scoreline was a fair reflection, Morgs?
Look, I think that's a fallacy as a phrase. I think the scoreline is always the only true reflection of the game. All Blacks got that margin in a 15-minute period of excellence where the Wallabies gifted them some possession, and they were able to do that with them. There were elements of the game where the Wallabies showed that they can go toe-to-toe with the All Blacks, but I saw Christy Doran write today, who's a nice watcher of the show and a good writer on the game. 43 missed tackles and I think 20 turnovers. You don't bet anyone, let alone the All Blacks, with that. So it's not. I think journalistic types like you, Benny, get too carried away with last week, and now you've got too carried away the other way with this week. So the truth is somewhere in the middle. This is a young, inexperienced Wallaby team who don't know each other well with a new coaching staff. There are going to be rough bumps in the road as we go along. Last week was hugely encouraging. And there's enough in the weekend to show that there's things to be had. We can play a lot better than we have in the last 2 weeks, and they will as they continue to play together. The other thing is we'll see with Dave Rennie is he won't be afraid to wield the axe, and I dare say there'll be changes, some forced, some perhaps not so. The next time we see the Wallabies in 2 weeks' time, and there's a few guys that'll be able to play a little bit of rugby, which is great in the next couple of weeks as well. So there'll be some more change on that Wallaby team, but the Wallabies will go back. They'll have a couple of days off with family and friends as much as they can, and then back into work.
Mate, there's more in that. There's more I want to unpack with you. Before we do, let's just recap what we're here for, what we're going to go through in the show. We're going to talk about the All Blacks win here. We're going to talk through the game in general. We're going to talk about who the players of the match were. Who were the players who stood up that are worth noting? It was a little bit difficult, this one, I think, Morgs. Not often we're okay picking up 3 to 5, but I think this is a little harder in terms of the standout players. You've got a play of the game you want to talk through. Coach's Corner, of course, if you're new to the show, Morgs will always pull out a play and show us less educated rugby watchers exactly what happened out there. And we finish off with the Triple Q with Matt Toomua. Now, that's quick quarantine questions before the test matches. These were recorded. So we sat down with Matt. Morgan spoke to Matt for a few minutes on a few different topics. Morgan, I had to cut out all the golf talk out of this one. I'll put the full version up on the YouTube channel. But if you want to listen to Morgan and Matt Toomua talk golf, go and watch that version. It's not in the version I'll play today. Let me just also say, go to the rugbyruckus.com shop. We've got some great shirts in there. Former rugby player XXL, the struggle is real. I know a few props morgs have said to me they want another X on the front of that jersey. They want it to be a triple XL T-shirt. That, of course, is something that we might have to do. And from there, guys, also just a quick plug for our newsletter. Now, the last couple of weeks, we've actually gone ahead leaps and bounds. Welcome to all our new subscribers on the newsletter. I have a lot of fun each week putting it together, Morgs. You and I bounce off each other and run a few ideas. If you're not a subscriber this week, what you missed out on before the Bledisloe was an exclusive podcast where Morgs and I talked about what might happen, looked at the teams, and talked about predictions for scores, etc. Morgs wrote a great piece actually for the newsletter on how to play Caleb Clark, and that'll actually be part of what we talk about as we go along here, Morgs, what the Wallabies got wrong in playing Caleb Clark, and your thoughts on that were really insightful. You actually talked about how Lottie Takiri and Wendell Saylor were those X-factor type players and how you played with them, and I might get you to talk to that when we go to the Caleb Clark footage. Morgan did a Bledisloe preview, which is on par as well. On par as well. We wrap up the news headlines and you get rumours of the week. So get to the rugbyruckus.com on the right-hand side there in the desktop. You can sign up for a free trial. Morgs, you talked then about what we saw in this Wallaby side, what we saw in this All Black side. We knew the All Blacks would come to their home, to Eden Park. You talked about Caleb Clark in front of his parents, what this game would mean for them. 10-7 at half time, it was still game on. I felt like the Wallabies had the better of the first 20 minutes. They certainly had some advantages in territory and possession, but then after half time, that gap just blew out in the space of about 10 minutes. What was the shape of the game that you saw, Morgs? Were the All Blacks on top for most of it?
I think that what they did do is the periods where they were on top, they came away with points. The Wallabies were probably had their noses in front in the way they played in terms of possession, territory, influence on the game for the first 30 minutes, and only came away with that 10-7 lead at half time. And then the All Blacks have just a purple patch the first 20 minutes of the second half, and they come away with 3 tries. It really ices that game. And that's the difference, turning strong parts of your game. The game's going to ebb and flow largely, especially against quality teams. And the crucial thing is taking points when you have those in your positive part of the field, and holding on and just trying to find a way not to concede points when it's not your time, and trying to have that ebb and flow of the game, try and control wresting momentum back off an All Blacks team isn't easy. And the All Blacks were able, as I mentioned, 20 minutes, blew the game apart. That's game over. And that's probably the real difference. The Wallabies, too many missed tackles, and we'll talk about in Coach's Corner a little bit of how those missed tackles came apart, because that raw data of 40-odd missed tackles, you can't beat the All Blacks. Well, that's true, but there's a lot of why about that as well.
And that's exactly right, mate. The amount of missed tackles, the amount of probably just structural things that didn't seem quite right for Wallabies. A couple of things that stood out for me. One of the things you said on the podcast a while back about James O'Connor is he's a great player, not a great 5'8". So he's a great player who is playing the 5'8" role as opposed to a bloke who is naturally a 5'8". And it was really noticeable when Matt Toomua went off how much shape the Wallabies seemed to lose. Matt Toomua was taking a lot of that first receiver ball, was definitely stepping into that 10 role a fair bit in tandem with James O'Connor. Once he went to James O'Connor to his kicking game, cost the Wallabies dearly. You'll talk about that, I'm sure, when we start looking at that Caleb Clark bust up the middle. But what did you think of that the James O'Connor game in particular? I thought he struggled. He may be a guy who's under the pump from Dave Rennie.
Well, the 10 position is always hugely symptomatic of how your forward pack's doing, how your set piece is going. And he paid the price there for a much more physical, much more complete defensive effort from the All Blacks. You would have seen the real physical challenge they presented to Taniela Tupou, very different to the week before. We talked about that, Benny, in the newsletter, how physical they'd want to be. And it looks like they singled out a couple of guys, especially Taniela Tupou, to try and present that physical nature of the game to, and they did that excellently well. I think O'Connor, actually, he looked a bit busted up at the end of that game. He didn't look 100%, so I'm not sure if he had an injury he picked up in the game, but he didn't look very good at all. So I would think there's an injury cloud over O'Connor from what I could see just post-game, and I would say Toomua would be out as well. So I can see some force changes in that 10-12 channel, definitely 12 at the very least. We were talking up how good O'Connor was going after the first game. He's probably, if he's fit, he's the one you stick with, and you just try and find who the right 12 is to slot in next to him. And let's find out if he's going to be our 10 for the next couple of years, knowing that Noah Lolesio will get a chance at some stage, and then we'll find out if that kid can take that jersey off.
Yeah, mate, DL Chris making a couple of comments there about JOC as well. Loloseo is the interesting one. You will interesting to see if he gets a chance there. Let's talk about some other guys on the park. We'll talk about the All Blacks in a minute, particularly I think both the coach's corner and the player of the day All Blacks play. So we're talking about the Wallabies now, guys, but don't worry, we will get to some of the All Blacks players as well. One of the big selections, Morgs, obviously was Ned Hannigan in the back row there. Harry Wilson got out of a day, I think it was, he spent in hospital or at least crook for a day or more, did make the team. And it wasn't until I think Tommy Deason from the SMH spotted in the team photo that he wasn't there, that news came out. And it wasn't until I sort of looked at that and thought, oh, God, if Harry's not there, I didn't think that we had the personnel, particularly with Valentini out of the 22, the kind of personnel that can really physically match the All Blacks. The question mark over Ned Hannigan has always been that physicality. Did Ned do what the selectors wanted him to do, Morgs, or did you see enough from him that you'd want to keep him out there?
Well, I think he largely did. I think people were quite impressed with many of his involvements in the game. Crucial in the plays that led to the first try. Bit of extra footwork. I saw a really strong, good, powerful lateral step to get into contact, to find an arm instead of a shoulder. There was, he's hard at the ball when he needed to be. But then also there was a couple of penalties given away and things like that. So there was, it was when you look at the scales, they probably tipped in his favour. It's a game of footy from a guy who's only been training for the last 6 weeks or so now. I know, realised that the Tars got bounced out of Super a bit earlier. So that was, he's only been in the training paddock. So that was encouraging, I would have thought. Justifies the selection, I would think. He played as well as could be expected. And now the interesting thing is how patient Dave Rennie is with all of their players. Does anything come in and come straight out because of a couple of those more penalties? Down presence not enough for Dave Rennie's liking. And if not Ned and not Samu, then does he turn to Valentini? Does he keep turning to someone new until he gets the results required?
Yeah, Valentini's an interesting one because we keep hearing about how physical he is. We keep seeing how strong he is, but he's yet to really impose himself on a game at this level. Anyway, he's done some good work at the Brumbies, so he'd be a little bit of a gamble as well. One of the things that the question marks around Ned were, this is 6 minutes in, right? This is one of the real chances that the Wallabies had, and you see here, Harry Wilson takes it up. Hooper's over the ball. O'Connor is just going to take it to the line, and I think we'll see Taniela Tupa go through off a Nick White pass here. He'll get in tight, in close. Hooper keeps it. Look at Sevilla. Sevilla's around the leg. Sevilla comes right in from the side now, over the top, but Hannigan hits him there. So this is what I wanted to show. So firstly, the Wallabies on the attack a half a metre out. Sevilla absolutely comes in from the side after making the tackle, gets up and just runs in from the side, gets the ball and gets the penalty. Gardner doesn't penalise him. But watch Ned Hannigan hit and just make no impact on Sevilla. Sevilla's so strong over the ball. And that's the kind of thing where we need to be physical. We need to be making sure that we can have the impact on these guys. And we need to see a team, to me, that can match it. Another guy in that vision there that I think Morgs probably did some good things for himself is Brandon Pangramosa. The line out seemed to work okay. He gets around the park okay. Anyone else sort of stand out for the Wallabies that you think either won't be looked at or will be looked at in terms of Rennie thinking about where to go next?
Well, I think both locks did enough to warrant reselection. The continued selection, they seem to be a step or two above what's coming in behind. Phillip was industrious. Salakai Loto was probably our best ball carrier in some of the hard stuff in the middle. Both did well at line-out time, got their movement stuff right, got a lot of their tactical and technical stuff right. Line-out time, which helped Brendan Pangamosa have a pretty assured day at line-out time and helped him get himself into the game. So often, I think with hookers that their throwing is a barometer for their performance. It's really hard for a hooker to miss a throw and then get himself into the game. They often spend, 3 minutes running around thinking about that last line-out throw. So that gave him a bit of confidence. And I think BPA and both locks should continue to be selected. The front row did what they do. Taniela had up and down first half, but he's a crucial player for us. Enough positives there to stick with those 4 props on rotation, I would think. So it's not a terrible thing to have quite a settled tight 5. And then from there, we just need to build more and more involvements in the game from those guys. Carrying, short passing game, plenty of breakdown work, and just getting some more involvements defensively from them in that first, second, third defender. Just getting set a little bit earlier so we can get off the line and be more aggressive. So those core groups are sort of 6 hookers, 7th with Falau Fainga, if you include Ulisi, who seems to be their go-to off the bench, and he had a decent involvement. That core group of tight 5, need to continue to develop together so that inside channel in defence and that middle of the park carries continue to get better for the Wallabies, because those two things from both sides of the ball are so crucial for the larger structures of both attack and defence.
Morgs, we talked, before the first test about the way that this Wallabies team would want to keep it fairly simple. In the newsletter, you talked about some of the things that they might do, but knowing that this All Blacks defensive line was going to be pushing up hard, was going to be fast speed coming at them all the time. Did they not really try anything different? Like you talked about maybe a chip in behind, keeping it tight with the mauls a bit more, at the line out to try to slow down that defensive line. Did they still sort of stick to what they did last week, or did you see anything new from the Wallabies, or did you expect to see anything new?
Well, it's that idea of whether you're Dave Rennie, you sit there and you try and second guess what the All Blacks are going to do and prepare accordingly, or do you just think this is our second game together? Let's just be a better version of what we were last week. And I think they went for the latter. I think so many things that I reflect on when I think about the Wallabies goes back to 2016 Wallabies versus England, that 3-test series. And I feel that the Wallabies in that series were very reactive in jumping around in mindset to what they thought England would do. I think in the second test, they thought England would flood the breakdown, and England would put a man into the breakdown. And so you can get paralysed almost by trying to overanalyze or predict what the opposition will do. So there is that inherent danger in that. But I would have thought that everyone would know the first 20 of an All Blacks off an underwhelming performance, they'll come hard at you. How the Wallabies tried to do it was almost meet fire with fire and play everything hard over the gain line, try and attack the seam on set piece. And that did work largely. But I still would have seen even maybe second half trying a few different things just to change it up, just to keep them on their heels. But there was enough in that first 20 minutes from the Wallabies to say that Dave Rennie was probably right to continue doing what he was doing. I didn't see much different from the Wallabies. I just saw them continue to play the same way and try and get better at it. What we saw was an All Black team better prepared for it.
Mate, and I suspect you'll talk about this when we start to look at a couple of these plays in a minute from the All Blacks and the problems that the Wallabies had in defending them. But also, I'd suggest that they didn't handle the injuries particularly well when they lost Toomua and that to scramble, bring Patea in, was Patea and Paisami together. I don't think they handled that particularly well. Korobidi was scrambling a lot, trying to fill in some holes. They didn't look particularly sharp. Quick question from the crowd, because this is probably a really interesting one. It wasn't Michael Hooper's best game. For a guy that we know has an enormous amount, enormous engine, is always in there putting back. It wasn't potentially his game. Do you think he's droppable at all? I don't think he is.
Not at the moment. I tell you
That's
what.
from Jason Sherman, by the way.
Yeah, if they play 5 or 6 tests in a row, he might need a break because he's just like you look at about the 84th minute of last week. He could almost not drag himself to his feet. He went that hard for 84 odd minutes, and he kept going. He did it again in a losing side on the weekend. So there is an attrition rate to his physical reserves at some stage. It's not often they play this amount of tests in a row. He'll get a bit of a break this week with the 2-week backup, but I think they'll play 6 or maybe 7 tests in 8 or 9 weeks. That's a lot with a block there. And if the Wallabies are pressured to perhaps pick up an extra game against Argentina for revenue purposes, I'm not sure what developments may still happen there. That's a lot of footy there, and at some stage in Australia-Argentina test match with McWright at 7 could be the perfect antidote to that.
Yeah, mate, I don't know if I finished my point properly before, but I was talking about that back row with Ned Hannigan and Wilson, and looking at this team and looking at the fact that if Wilson is out, they don't really have like a nice Sarani or someone else there, another big-bodied back rower. It's amazing how quickly Wilson has become really important to this team. He didn't probably have as good a game as he did in the first test, but he was still there. He was still present. Throwing himself into rucks, getting up hard, and putting the pressure on the kickers, all that kind of stuff. He got around the park well, but I think he's becoming, as I suspected he would, a really important cog in the wheel of what this Australian side needs to do. Mate, let's talk about the players of the round. And unsurprisingly, this is dominated by an All Blacks side that in the end would have felt quite comfortable in that this came together for them. Morgs, just run through this list brief, if you don't mind, mate, and just talk about who we pulled out.
Yeah, I thought your boy Anton Leonard-Brown was excellent. He obviously got a bit of claret early and then came back on. He was very assured in the midfield, had some nice touches in attack. He just did his job, as he always does at whatever level we see him, to an excellent elite standard. He was very, very good in the midfield, complemented good Hugh well, gave the All Blacks some surety in defence, which is which is what Rico Ioane was found wanting in the week before. And so he was excellent. Matt Phillip, toss up between him and Lukan Salakaia-Loto, who was probably the best for the Wallabies, truthfully, in terms of trying to be influential, and truthfully, who had the ledger of positive involvements far outweigh negative involvements. There was some excellent footy from some of our Wallabies players, just tempered by some error rates. When we talk about 20 turnovers and 40 odd missed tackles, that's what negates, and that's what takes away from some of the positive performances of other guys. Thought the second row did well there. Matt Phillip, Shades, Lucan. And look,
he handled the ball a lot, actually. Matt Phillip handled the ball a lot. He got really involved. He was often a fulcrum point in the ball moving out there, shaping the run and getting the ball moving. I went back and watched a bit, and he handled a fair bit.
Yeah, he did. Salakaia-Loto carried more, but Phillip did a lot of work in, put his hand up when a few people weren't around, when he had to double carry sometimes, or other guys were going ruck to ruck, and he put his hand up to run through some heavy All Blacks traffic. So he did well. Aaron Smith, look, when your forwards do what the All Black forwards did, that the Nine's job was much easier this week than last week, but his service was assured, some telling involvements. He was busy. I thought that was a nice little bounce back from a guy who didn't play poorly last week, truthfully. We know he holds himself to a high standard on the field. So I think that was good to see him bounce back, play well from an All Blacks perspective. Caleb Clark, well, I suppose he was okay. He probably just snuck into too bad. The DL Chris, I couldn't say it any better, mate. What a monster. I'm still having nightmares.
Still having nightmares.
I was never out there. And Artie Sevilla, look, he was absolutely outstanding. When we talked about in our newsletter, we talked about it previously, Benny, the mindset, the attitude, the approach of an All Black team coming off, an underwhelming by their lofty standards performance. Let's not get carried away and say they were terrible. They're just a natural reaction demanded by the New Zealand rugby public. This guy was always going to be at the forefront of it, and he didn't disappoint. With ball in hand, when trying to get the ball back off the Wallabies, he was in everything, chasing everything. He was a little bit of a hog when he scored his try.
Which you predicted he could be.
Oh, Filippo Dauguna gave a little head fake and stepped back to try and get him, but it was just too big, too strong. He still scored, but I tell you what, it would have been fun for a Wallabies if he just got caught with that one with a few guys lined up outside him. But he was excellent, Artie Sevilla. We're big fans of him. We're disappointed by the accident of birth that finds him in an All Blacks jersey, but you can only admire one of the great players in the game at the moment.
Absolutely, mate. And I'll just drop a quick comment from Twitter, because it's nice to have some viewers on Twitter as well as Facebook today. Scotty Tay says, looks like there's still a significant skill delta between the ABs and Oz man for man. I actually didn't feel that. There's a clip that I might show a little bit later in the show that I think that the skill delta is probably, getting closer than it has been. I thought they looked pretty good out there, Morgs. Yes, too many errors, but still guys that are showing that they're doing more with the ball than they have in the past potentially.
Well, look, I think the All Blacks are across the board a more skillful team than the Wallabies, and I know Scotty, and he knows how hard it is for me to say that. Scotty Taylor.
He also asked if you're still at Mad Monday, mate. He's still at the Wicks Mad Monday. He was asking.
Mate, we've got 4 teams still in it. We've got a couple of grand finals this week. Not at all, mate. Not at all. Scotty's a coach of junior teams down in Melbourne, so he knows his footy, and he's a Cantabrian, so he knows a bit about skillful footballs as well. So look, across the board, they are still a wonderfully skillful team, probably more skillful than we are in the way they want to play the game, short passing game, offload game, and I'm talking about breakdown skills, tackle and plug and counteract skills. You saw Artie Sevilla on that clip of yours versus Hannigan. What he did was illegal. It was a penalty, but he was so skillful at doing it was that he was challenging for the ball, that he swung his hips around so that his body was in the shape as though he'd come through the gate. So he came from the side, swung his hips around to the back, and he did it quickly enough and assuredly enough that it fools the referee to think that he's come through the gate. That's a skill. So when I talk about skillful, I talk about game management, game smarts, execution of core skills. Execution of core skills under fatigue and the highest pressure that Test football is, 27-7 means the All Blacks are more skillful than the Wallabies.
Mate, and let's talk about what was a bit of a no-brainer for us, but the man of the match. We've talked about Loma, we've talked about the impact that he had. Your subscriber preview talked about the way that you handle a guy like this is you just don't give him the ball early. You try to suck the life out of him by not letting him get involved in the game, and conversely, you'd expect the All Blacks to try to get the ball in his hands really early. What about this guy, mate? The poise, the power, and didn't he enjoy himself out there at Eden Park?
And that's it. At the elite level, it takes a special kind of athlete and rugby player to be that dominant, to have that much of an X factor. And Caleb Clark just has it. He's just devastatingly lethal with the ball. If you give him the ball, what you're doing is you're either going to soak in a heap of defenders or you're going to beat a heap of defenders. And he does other things. His field position, his work right off the ball, those things are really good as well. But as a damaging ball runner, he's as good as it gets in world rugby at the moment.
He absolutely is, mate. And we talked about the way that these two teams would shape up. And really, for me, I said this All Blacks team isn't as good as All Blacks teams have been the last few years, right? They're a team that tight five is nowhere near as good as it has been. You bring back a Retallick and a Whitelock, this is a massively different team. For me, they've been missing Owen Franks ever since it was Franks and Moody up the front. Lalala, Tuangafasi are good, but they're not to that level. But when you bring two guys in like Beauden Barrett and Caleb Clark, that individual brilliance, that individual ability to tear a game up was an absolutely massive difference. Barrett did it himself from the back, went through a few tackles, always has those eyes up looking for the gaps. And when Caleb Clark got a sniff, what about the hunger in him to get up off the deck and keep going a couple of times? And really, those two guys for me made such a difference to this All Black side, such a big difference.
Yeah, Beauden Barrett, excellent, and we'll look at the clip later and I'll talk about it. But the excitement around Caleb Clark when he gets those involvements just grew his stature within himself. His chest was out, he was excited, and that just meant he would continue to be a great force for the All Blacks. So we'll reference some of that newsletter stuff when we talk about one of his players.
Well, mate, I think it's a natural one for us to go into is let's talk play of the day, which I think he has a very, very big hand on. Just give me a second and I'll get this video up.
Yes,
mate, do you want me?
Yeah, you just play it. So in the newsletter we say one way to do it is you just don't kick it to him uncontestable where he gets a run up, and that's just what we did. We give him a run up. He finds a mismatch on Nick White and James Slipper, gets through. This tackle's probably completed, but he's just that enthused. He gets up, he bounces, he keeps going. And once they win this breakdown, it's game over. And you look here, it doesn't matter where it goes, who it goes to. Sevilla can pass to three guys on the outside, throws a dummy. Doesn't matter. The ease of the second phase is directly related to and thanks to the work of Caleb Clark. Like the amount of players he beats, that he gets that far over the game line with his line, but you just can't cope with this. It doesn't matter. They all might as well blitz or go for an intercept. It doesn't matter what you do here. The result of his carry is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, possibly 8 on 4.5 almost. It's just game over there. And you don't give those All Blacks opportunities, and if you do give it to them, they don't miss them.
And that's exactly right, mate. And this is the point here too. We talked about, you said you don't give them those opportunities. Look, James O'Connor goes for the kick here. If you look outside him, he's got Paisami, and I think that's a Paenga Amosa out on the wing. So he's got no one to his right, but nonetheless, he's hoiking the ball down that side of the field where Caleb Clark lives. And then all Clark does too is comes back here with the classic setup. If you look here, you got nice little, channel of All Blacks with a referee in it as well that he picks, and only Nick White in the space the other side of that channel. These guys can't get, that's Hooper right there that can't get across. These guys can't get across, and he's just too big, too strong, and too fast to do that. And through he goes.
Yeah. And so the two things we referenced on Friday in our newsletter was, if you're going to kick to him, make it contestable, or don't kick to his channel. So the better play there is to kick down the left, back to the left-hand side into the 15. That's where all your players are. That's where your kick chase is. Even if they went right away from Clark or further towards his wing, he's one-on-one with Brendan Paenga Amosa. There's only going to be one winner there as well. So that was really tactically poor option from the Wallabies, and also resultant from the pressure that the All Blacks had put the Wallabies under. That was static, no dead ball for the Wallabies. There was no run options. Their options were bounce back to the left, the blind side there where they had numbers, and try and get go forward ball, bounce back to the left, and then box kick or kick down the line to put pressure on with a high line speed. Or O'Connor there when he got the ball, hooking it back left and hoping for the best. So almost a no-win situation for the Wallabies.
And if your option is kick, you need to be a good kick. That was not a good kick in any way, shape, or form. Just absolutely down his throat. Morgs, let's move to Coach's Corner, and that's another clip which will make the All Blacks viewers feel a little bit better about things. Hold on a second.
Yeah, while you're setting it up, so this was a sort of a way of explaining some of the issues around why we missed 43 tackles. And it's not as simple as we just missed 43 straight up one-on-one tackles. So Patay gets the ball here, and there's a loose carry and a turnover. We highlighted All Blacks turnover play last week. Look at what they do here. Immediately they get behind the ball into some sort of shape. Now let's just have a look. When this first breakdown, when we get to the first breakdown, Benny, we'll have a look at this. But we play it on. They get to an edge. They get a nice inside ball, and then there's an offload there. So it's already quick ball back over the gain line. Now, if you see, they go to the blind side, and if you go back a couple of frames, Benny, what you'll see is, and Aaron Smith didn't even get to, but what you'll see is the Wallabies have, under stress, have overfolded to the far side, and even a reloading player ends up there. So what we end up doing is sticking 5 players in the 15-metre channel on 2 All Blacks. Now, the play is very quick. So Smith actually goes the wrong way.
He does. Smith goes the wrong way. I was about to say that, yeah.
He obviously doesn't get the right comms, but Mo'unga knows. He's looked up. He's seen 5 Wallaby defenders who've overfolded. All you see, I think it's Alaalatoa trying to reload that way. And then once this breakdown is won there's not enough folding. If you freeze it now, Benny, so what you'll see is, they just haven't reacted to folding. Actually, at one stage, Alan Alaalatoa there is calling more players his way, and it almost doesn't matter where this ball goes. Marika Korobidi, under stress, is trying to work. But what he does is he works inefficiently by being outside of system. The best thing he could do there is either shuffle guys across, so maybe Alaalatoa or himself into second defender. And that would mean that these guys in the midfield would know they have an extra number. At the moment, no one knows Marika Korobidi is on this side of the ruck. So he doesn't count as a number because it doesn't change what's in your head. If I'm, I think it's Jordan Pataya out there in the middle. If I'm Jordan Pataya, I've got no idea Korobidi is coming. If I did, I might be able to step out an extra person or come up a bit harder on one person. We could work together. But at the moment, 4 Wallabies are working independently here. If you play it on, Korobidi just slots in wherever, and no one knows where he's going to be. So the guy in the inside jams, Pataya's flat-footed, and then they over-track on the outside as well. If you go back to this bit of it, we could probably play the whole bit of that last phase again. You see here that Korobidi, he just needs to push after this. So we play it there. He needs to push into the line and to the left from where he was at Neg 1 then, and push other guys around. But he pulls himself out. He works hard. Geez, he works excellently hard, but really...
That's him going through in the back there, yeah.
Yeah, if you press play, he just goes. Whereas he could slot in just outside Lukan Salakai-Loto and push the second defender there, or connect to the third defender. And either way, the Pataya's on his own, doing his own thing. Lukan Salakai-Loto gets chewed up on the inside. So Wallaby players there under stress are working individually and inefficiently, all because they overfolded 5v2 post-turnover. They really need to stay disciplined there. And then after that ball goes through, Korobidi's out. And even here at the end, we need to solve that a little bit better where, see, Banks is calling his player out, but he just can't leave his weak inside shoulder there as a cover. They ended up with a 2-on-2 in a really poor jockey position, but still solvable there. Banks has just got to make that tackle 2-on-2. He doesn't need, Pataya needs to make that tackle, 2-on-2, while Banks has got that outside player. So even after all that, a good team like the Wallabies, when they just get some of their defensive shape and some of their understanding and comms to a better level, they'll be able to solve that at the end and try and slow that ball down out wide. So overfold off turnover. Firstly, loose carry into overfold off turnover, into inefficient play, not pushing and staying part of your structure, into a poor jockey 2-on-2 with a weak shoulder is a try. So, inside of all that, Benny, we probably had five missed tackles. not many of them are for defensive tackling technique. A lot of it is body position,
structural,
communication, and structural.
That's what I was going to ask, mate. When you see that overfolding in the game, what are the things that contribute to it? Is it you always talk about communication. Is it four guys on the short side there in the 15s not talking to each other or not looking up and not doing what they need to do? Are they all culpable? Like when you've got 4 or 5 guys there, and it was so obvious. Smith did go the wrong way. Mo'unga's standing there. Mo'unga then just straight away goes bang, shifts it back. And interestingly, Geordie Barrett takes it up. They probably should have even shifted it straight away. Then they could have gone ahead. Then they took one extra ruck. But what causes that? Is that the kind of thing that is it the All Blacks pressure that's made that, or is it this team just not working together yet?
Now, a lot of it is pressure. A lot of it is stress. That point in the game, you're chasing the game. It's a big turnover. I'm sure they would have talked a lot about how to defend off turnover through the week. Be really aware, work hard off turnover, get our line right. So what the Wallabies did was, unfortunately, they overworked. A few guys folded and overworked, and also some guys are reloading, and they're default reloading back to the blind side. So if you've got maybe one extra on the blind side and 2 blokes pop up and stick themselves on the blind side for a bit of a rest or just to get back in the line, you very easily end up with 5-on-2. And what you need there is the 2 end guys pushing those guys, screaming at those guys, push left, and the whole line slides. We don't need the guy who's third on the blind side running around the back of the line sprinting out to the midfield unless there is really slow ball or it's an outside back trying to get to the far side on a reload. But on the second phase of unstructured, high-speed turnover ball, you just need line integrity. And that line needs to slide across to give more numbers to the open side. So much of that, I think, is stress and pressure that the All Blacks exert on unstructured footy, turnover, counter-attack, that makes you make bad decisions, that makes you panic and overwork. And that will come with time together. That will come with time in camp. That will come with time with the new defensive coach, Matt Taylor. Defence needs time. And, we've referenced Benny Darwin ad nauseum before on this, but it's interesting that he talks about cohesion affecting defence more than anything. Maybe we saw an example of that on the weekend.
Mate, now just before we go on to our Matt Toomua segment, I want to just show you a clip that I quite like the look of when the Wallabies were pushing the ball around, were doing some interesting things. They get the ball back from Caleb Clarke. And this is where I saw Philip handle about 2 or 3 times in this one.
It's a contestable kick on Caleb Clarke.
Exactly right. Exactly what you called for, mate.
There it is.
And then you can see here, Matt Phillip again handles, ball's held on too well. I just quite like the way the Wallabies shifted. Matt Phillip for the 3rd time handles in this play. To Tupou, they're up on him hard. I think that might have been Tupou Vai who was on him there. And then they find the space. So they go wide, and then Paisami's through, and they go wide again. Paenga Amoso, good work to be there. Nick White at the back. And look at that. Harry Wilson just hurls himself in there. Not sure if you're allowed to do that, Harry. Lucan carries up the middle, and then there's width. And this is where there's a bit of space again. Matt Phillip handles again, and out we go. And there's Rocky Elsom into space, and he just doesn't have that connection with Korobidi. That's the kind of thing Ben Darwin, I'm sure, would point to around a Waratah number 6 trying to pass to a Rebels flyer, and them just not having that connection, that understanding. But just then, seeing the Wallabies playing well, seeing Matt Phillip handle 3 or 4 times in it, made me feel good about some of the things we're starting to see out of this team, Morgs, even though they weren't quite up to this All Black side.
Yeah, I think there was a Freudian slip there. You referred to Ned Hannigan as Rocky Elsom. I'll tell you what, Rocky Elsom...
Did I?
I don't know what that was from. Rocky Elsom wouldn't even have passed that ball, let alone passed the ball.
How about that? Just a big blonde back row of that, but I'd take Rocky back now, though.
Yeah, and that's why when you asked about this game, I mentioned that there was some encouraging signs there. That is an excellent passage of play. Dare I say, there's a little bit of All Blacks footy to that, Chiefs footy to that. And when I talk about that tight 5 group evolving together, it's that short passing game that's a huge part of that. A short passing game in your tight 5, a skillful tight 5, has a much bigger effect on a skillful back row or a skillful centre, who are often negated by the opposition. But it can be a huge point of difference in the tight 5. And that, if it continues in that vein, will be very, very good for the Wallabies. And as I said, there's enough in that sort of passage of play to be encouraging for us Wallaby fans.
Absolutely, mate. Now, listen, we're going to go to our quick quarantine questions with Matt Toomua. It's about 4 minutes. We're going to come back afterwards. If you're still watching on Facebook or Twitter, which I can see plenty of you are, get your questions ready. We'll finish off the show with a few of your questions, and more, we might talk around some things they might think about in changes to that Wallabies side, where Rennie might be going. Of course, the newsletter is where we'll capture all that, though, in the next couple of weeks as well. But let's listen to you talking to Matty Toomua. This was before the first test, but just some really interesting insight. Listen to what he says about what Scott CEO does in the change rooms before a test match. We'll be back after this and we'll take some questions.
Great to have Matt Toomua jump on questions. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
No worries, mate. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk a bit of footy. Mate, you're a pretty experienced player now. What's your game day routine like? Are you pretty chilled on game day these days?
Yeah, definitely changed a little bit. Particularly with the night games. I don't like night games, so you just got to wait it out kind of thing. So, I kind of I do all my prep the day before. I know what I'm doing during the day, like if I have a little sleep or eat and stuff like that. But I try to keep it pretty normal. Sometimes I might even get out for a bit of a hit of golf, hit some balls, some putts and chips and stuff like that. So yeah, whatever to fill in the time, to be honest, because it's a long old day, particularly for a test match when you play like 8:30. So anything to kill the time.
What about when we get to the change room? Which guys get really pumped up? Which guys get the change room going?
Scotty Seo is probably the most interesting. I don't know. Have you heard the yarn about? Have you heard about Scotty before games?
People have mentioned it. Well, what's the yarn?
Scotty he started it maybe, I don't know. We thought he was having a laugh maybe about 6 years ago. He started barking after we do our like little Brumbies or Wallabies on 3 or whatever, and he just started like woofing. And we thought it was a joke, but he keeps doing it now. I don't know. It's something about it being a big dog or whatever, but it's pretty odd. But yeah, run with it. You know what it's like when you get all emotional. Everyone kind of you do some things that you probably regret later. But I think he's definitely the most memorable.
Whatever works, I suppose. I remember the great Rocky Elson will be in a shower brushing his teeth. So whatever works for people to make them play well. And I don't know if no Wallabies bark and Brumbies don't bark. So I don't know where that comes from.
I don't know either. Yeah, you're right. No, his question. I remember seeing Rocky when I played with him at the end. He'd be asleep under his change room until last minute, and he had to go out. But yeah, everyone's got their own method, I guess. You've
come through, mate. We've seen you develop. We've loved watching you play for many years. What's the best piece of rugby advice you've received?
God, I've probably received a lot. I actually remember Pat Langtree, our schoolboys coach. Just like the week or two before I went down to Brumbies. Obviously, you're super nervous. And back then, Sterling Mortlock and George Smith and all these kind of guys. And he just said to me, keep your head down and bum up. He said, just work hard. Don't try and, overdo things in terms of, socially. Just work hard, pick the brain of, people you look up to. And, things will come. So I always remember that. That would have been a good 13 years ago now. Head down, bum up. And, yeah, it's always, I think from there, you probably set a good base and you can kind of do all right from there. So, yeah, always appreciated that.
Well, it's certainly gotten you far. What about growing up? Is there a former player or former classic Wallaby you liked watching coming up, a bit of a hero?
Yeah, as a fly half, I think, most people my age looked up to Bernie, Steve Larkham, and to get coached by him was incredible. And then, I think I owe him a lot in terms of inspiration, but then even just the work he put in with a lot of us young guys when we're down at the Brumbies or at the Wallabies, coaching was incredible. So he definitely probably holds that for me.
And what about, say it's probably last question, say it's cheat day, right? You've just walked off the golf course, you shot 40 points, you're about 6 over. You're pretty happy with yourself.
Yeah.
You don't really want to cook. What's a luxury food you grab for dinner? What's your go-to there?
I will cook it though. Corned beef or bisupo, as they say in the islands. Corned beef with a bit of spaghetti and some nice sticky rice. That's usually if we have a Saturday game. Sunday night, I'll veg out and have a good old crack. But yeah, bit of island food. If Dad's around, he'll cook me some as well. But it's definitely the soul food, as they say. Yeah,
that actually sounds better. My old man, when he did that, he would get pu'er, so watercress, and we get a few doughboys in there, and that's about it. We definitely didn't do it on pasta. That's I'll have to give that one a try. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Love it, mate. Love it. It's the best.
Nice, mate. Thanks for having a quick chat. Always good to see you. As I said, great to see you in that Wallabies top, and look forward to seeing you in a gold jersey.
Awesome. Thanks, Moggs.
Well, there you go, mate. He is such a great ambassador for the game, Matt Toomua. So well spoken, always good to talk to, mate. What about his Scott CEO story, mate? Did you have anyone doing that sort of carry on when you're in the Wallaby side?
No, there's I think there's certain kinds of guys in change rooms. There's the prowlers, which are the people just sort of walking around trying to transfer almost their nervous energy onto you. They want to talk to you. Dave Lyons was a great prowler who would come up to me and go, "Look, Morgs, third phase, if I'm on your inside, give me the ball, look for me, watch out for this player, make sure we're doing this." He liked to talk about the game. Then there's obviously the guys that have the music on, so their headphones on, they're gone. They're in their own zone, and there's an eclectic mix of music over the years that you've heard secondhand through other guys' earphones. Then there's the sleepers, those guys. Sort of a heart. Sometimes that was me. I was a bit of a sleeper.
That's why Rocky Elson was in my head, I think.
Yeah, Rocky. There's a few guys like that. And then there's a few guys that like, the yellers and screamers and like to pump up. They're a rarer breed, but never had someone barking like a dog. The big dog Scotty Stout. I'll have to ask him about that.
Mate, we will do. And tell you what we will have, though, is that you've got a few more of these interviews to come, and we've asked about who does get revved up in the change rooms. There's definitely some different stories to come out from that with some of the guys that we bring out. We might go for Lukan Salakai-Loto next week. I think he had some good lines in there as well. But let's just close the show out, mate, with a few comments or a few questions around what we think might be ahead. Obviously, a couple of weeks off now before the Bledisloes are back in Australia, the 31st of October, the following week, of course. Do you expect much tinkering? I think Rennie has basically said it. He seems to have been very front foot in out there declaring that, selection will be based on merit, not just to get into the team, but to stay in the team. He's not going to be afraid to wield the axe. I'll throw up quickly one from Dwayne Toho, who said Nick White was good but not great. He wants McDermott to have a look in. And that's very much a theme we see from a lot of Aussie fans out there, wanting McDermott to get a go. Any thoughts on that one, Morgs?
Oh, I think they're definitely not talking rubbish. I think I picked him in my first Wallabies team after the squad was announced. So I just thought his form at super level was irresistible almost. But what I will say is that the way that Dave Rennie seems to want his nines to play does hand a little bit of advantage to the kicking games of Nick White and Jake Gordon. Tate's probably got the least impressive kicking game at the moment, but running game, challenging fringes. His pass off the deck is a continual work in progress. I love the fact that he's been working with Will Genia through the year, so that will help him there. I dare say you'll see him at some stage. Look, just as we were lauding Nick White the week before, he was almost a symptom of exactly how the Wallabies went. Excellent the week before, not as good this week. I'm still a little bit of a pick and stick guy in this situation, so I'm happy to see Nick White there again. But if they were to go to Tate McDermott, I think you'd know I'm on the record of saying I'd be pretty excited by it.
And, mate, outside him with Toomua gone, I think I threw up on Twitter that they might go for Samu Karevi and bring him back if they're looking for a 12. What do you think they'll stick outside their 9 choice? And I see that Alan Henwood asked a similar question there. Thank you, Alan, but we've got Mitch Evans up on the screen.
Yeah, I think we'll go. I think they'd go Simone. Truthfully, I think it's the right mix of someone who can carry for you and someone who can create a little bit. I think Hodge would be more of a just a really nice straight line runner. I've always said Hodge is a ball runner, not a ball player, which means I think he's a 13/15. So I've got no desire to see Hodge there at 12. But if you're going to have a straight out ball runner, then Paisami is probably the best ball runner we've got. But not the ball player. So I think Simone is probably the more complete player, the one whose Super Rugby form deserves an opportunity.
Particularly if you're going to give Lolosio a go too. If you're going to give Lolosio a go, you got your 10-12 combo there.
Yeah, either way, it's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised to see O'Connor Simone or Lolosio Simone. I believe that Ire and some other Wallaby members might get a run for a pseudo Waratahs or invitational team this Saturday. TG Milner possibly against Argentina in what will be, a scrimmage style game. It won't be a match that we will watch on TV or have spectators, pseudo training session / scrimmage, but which means at least I'll get some footy in. And considering I dare say the Wallaby coach will have a good look at it. If he impresses there, that can't hurt his claims to start on October 31 in the Bledisloe at Homebush.
Absolutely. And, mate, you called me a pork chop on Twitter. I mentioned at the start of the show, the pig is a magical, wonderful animal, though, mate. And we're going to have more thoughts from me on this, because I thought that was an All Black side that wasn't quite up to scratch, wasn't quite up to what we see from All Black sides generally. If that is the case, if you know, and there are some who agree with me, coming back to Australia, you hope our guys grow a bit of an extra leg. We've got 2 games. We've got a Bledisloe that's alive. Morgs, we're definitely in it, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, we're definitely in it. Like, if you came, the best result we could probably have hoped for was to come home needing to win 2 games to win the Bledisloe. We either would have meant we've won one of them, or we've drawn one of them, or whatever. We would have always had to come home to win 2. So we've got that opportunity. Look, just to get your comments in context, don't forget it's the year after a World Cup. It's a transition year for Wallabies, All Blacks. It's also that for England, Ireland, and South Africa. South Africa, we haven't even talked about. The harsh truth is, I'm really disappointed in the South African Rugby Union for not coming out here. I think the player welfare thing is a poor excuse. It is not the real reason. Now, there might be a myriad of reasons around there. I don't think it's going to hurt them. It seems now financially it won't hurt them. I wouldn't be surprised if Supersport have guaranteed them some money, and there's talk that they still get a share of the pie of the Rugby Championship anyway, because they're not allowed to come out of here. But there is possibly no incentive. But I'm hugely disappointed in the Springboks for not coming. You look at what Argentina have gone through to get here. You look at the quarantine protocols that Rugby Australia have put in place. There is no true reason why the Springboks couldn't be playing rugby in the Rugby Championship, and I think it's a pretty good option.
And mate, and to me, it smells a little bit because it was done at the absolute last hurdle. Everything was moved, everything was put in place over some time. If player welfare was genuine, they knew how much footy they had weeks and weeks back when all these things were being worked out. Nothing manifestly changed after they got their starting dates locked in, after they got their north-south, whatever their equivalent game was, locked in. They knew how much footy was coming. So to make it the call of it's the reason right then just doesn't make any sense at all. In fact, Morgs, I'm gonna just run it through.
Oh,
there you go, mate. It's in the bullshit meter. It's bullshit meter. It's right into the red zone, mate. South Africa's decision to not come is right up there on the bullshit meter. There you go. We've proven it once again.
Mate, how funny! The best thing is they sat there voting against the December 12 game for player welfare and all this, and we sat there, Australia and New Zealand, going at each other, and they're laughing, going, "Well, we're voting against it. We're not even coming." So they schooled us both. Anyway, that's it.
Morgs, look, always enjoy our chats, mate. I've enjoyed the rambunctious nature of my Twitter engagements in the last day or so. What it shows is people care. There's a lot going on. There's stories about Channel 9 coming hard for the ratings. All of that stuff we'll get at to at another time. But Morgs, good to see some more footy on the park. Good to see some I suppose, some people engaged in it. Not good to see the Wallabies lose, but we've got some hope. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Benny. Will do.
See you guys.